guys, welcome to my channel. Let's talk about the best horror of 2023. 2023 wasn't as strong of a year for horror as 2022 was, in my opinion, but there were a lot of nice surprises and some hidden gems sprinkled throughout. So in this video, I'm going to be ranking my favorites from the year. I just wanted to start off with some notable mentions for movies that were really good, but just shy of making my list. Swallowed, from this director of The Ruins, is a really gritty, low-budget indie horror about two friends who smuggle some drugs by swallowing them, and they soon learn that they actually have swallowed bugs that have deadly consequences. And it's a really unique body horror filled with really interesting performances, and I thought it was interesting. I wanted a little bit more of the bug action. It was the year for liminal horror like Skinamarink and The Outwaters. Skinamarink wasn't for me, but it did leave me uneasy at certain parts, and it kept me thinking about it long after, but overall it was not an enjoyable experience for me. It was too long and a little boring. I mean, a lot boring, really, but it was just very impactful, and I've seen it on a lot of people's best of list. The Outwaters I also thought was really unique and creative, and it would have been better if it had just been a little bit shorter. I love how chaotic it gets. Overall, yeah, it was too long, okay? Another notable mention is Husera, the Bone Woman. I think that this is a really fantastic story about identity and motherhood and just how a person can really just let everything get bottled deep down inside and avoid it for most of their life, and then one day they just kind of snap and it all comes to a head and you realize you've been living a lie for most of your life. I think it has some incredible imagery and it's a really powerful story, and I think a lot more people need to watch it. Coming into my top 10, these are horror movies that just were fun, exciting, rewatchable to me. Each is different. Some of them were pretty disturbing, some were shocking, and some were just downright silly and campy. Coming in at number 10 is Megan. Megan is about this roboticist that uses AI to create this robot girl named Megan, and she takes Megan and gives her to her niece who moves in with her after her family died, and the two bond greatly, almost too much. And Megan is very protective of her niece, and she'll go at great lengths to protect her, and that includes killing people. This one is just overall campy and fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's absurd, and I think it kind of leans into it a bit. There are some memorable moments throughout, especially the dance scene, and I feel like Megan is just on her way to becoming a horror icon. Coming in at number 9 is Scream 6, which I think was a lot of fun. It felt like a breath of fresh air for the franchise because it's set in New York City. So this is the first time the franchise is taken out of Woodsboro and into the city, and we're following Sam and her sister Tara from the previous film as they embark on a new journey after the events of the previous movie. Ghostface is back again, and he is after our group of friends that we all know and love. The standout to me is the setting, the location. There were some really creative kills. Overall, I just thought it was really fun. I think the weakest point of the movie is the reveal of who the killer is, but overall the journey was really fun. But sadly, I don't think we're gonna get another installment in the franchise that's following these group of characters because the Spyglass people fired Melissa Barrera, and Jenna Ortega is not going to be returning, and just it seems to be falling apart, and it's sad. Coming in at number 8 is Influencer. So this was a nice surprise that premiered on Shudder earlier in the year, and it's from the same team who did Superhost last year, I believe. This is about an influencer who is on a solo trip to Thailand, and she's capturing content, and she meets up with this other girl who's staying at the resort, and they kind of bond and hang out, and she basically reveals that she's not happy. The story takes a quick turn. It was really shocking and cool how they introduced it. The characters in this are just so interesting. The lead female character in this is just hypnotic. I could not take my eyes off of her. She's so charming, but also equally scary. Just watching the games that she plays throughout this, it's just so much fun. I also enjoyed the scenery. It's stunning to look at, and overall I thought the story story was really interesting. It's really scary. It's kind of got that talented Mr. Ripley vibes to it. I just thought this was a nice surprise. Coming in at number 7 is Hell House LLC Origins, the Carmichal Manor. That is the longest title ever. This is the latest installment in the Hell House LLC franchise, and I had a lot of fun with this. I thought it was pretty scary and just unsettling the whole way through. This one focuses on a group of investigators who are into true crime. They're staying at this mansion called the Carmichal Manor to document what happened there. So years prior, a whole family basically was murdered, and now they say the place is haunted. So they're investigating the case, and they soon find out that the place might actually be haunted. This one is filled with many more clowns, or more clown action than the original Hell House. So if you don't like clowns, don't watch this one. But there's some pretty creepy moments throughout this one. It's just unsettling, and it has great atmosphere, and I think there's just like this sense of dread throughout. And there's one scene in particular where a character is looking down a hallway and something is peeking around the corner. That one sent chills to my core. I don't like the idea of things peeking around corners, things crawling, appearing where they're not supposed to be. It freaks me out, and I think there were just a lot of great moments in this one. And I didn't think the acting was that bad. I've seen some people talk about that, but I think it was fine. Coming in at number 6 was a nice surprise, and that is Saw 10. So Saw has 10 entries, and not all of them are good. I personally love the first 3, but after that, they just kind of fell off for me. And this one kind of brings it all back to the original. So it's set between the first and second movie, and we get Jigsaw again. And we get to see Jigsaw as he heads out of the country to get this experimental procedure done that will help him cure his cancer. And then he soon learns that he's been scammed. So he basically seeks revenge on the people who scammed him in horrific ways. So this one, we get a lot of human story of Jigsaw. We get to really spend a lot of time with him, where you find yourself rooting for him and connecting with him and feeling sorry for him. And it just really humanized him again, or at all to begin with. So it's just this weird vibe where you're rooting for the killer in this one. And they also bring back Amanda, who is just a person I've missed, and I wish the events of the third one never happened, because that set the story off the rails, because those were the 2 most interesting characters in Saw, Amanda and Jigsaw. So we get them back in this one. The kills are brutal. Some of them made me a little squeamish, and it set up a nice adversary for Jigsaw. We're getting another one, so I'm interested to see where the story goes. I think we're gonna continue to get Jigsaw because they know that's where the heart of the Saw franchise is. Coming in at number 5 is Evil Dead Rise. This one was a blast. It's from director Rich Cronin, who is an Irish filmmaker who did The Hole in the Ground. And this one was just a non-stop thrill ride. The opening credits of this are absolutely amazing. They took my breath away. It's just gorgeous. The way the credit rises from the water, and even the opening moments of the movie were really good. They were really brutal and set the tone for the rest of the movie. I feel like this one is so silly, over the top, and absurd, and it just brought back that comedy ridiculousness of Evil Dead 2, and it's set on this family who's living in a high-rise that unknowingly unleashed the Deadites on the world, or into their apartment complex, and they basically get trapped and they're trying to fend off from the Deadites, and one of them infects the kid's mother. She is amazing. That actress, she ate every scene up. She is just so fun to watch. She's doing everything she can. She's so charming, and she also is just absolutely horrifying, the things she says to her kids. And also interesting to note that the kids are not off limits from the danger in this, and they go through it. There's so much blood in this. There's so many memorable moments, and I love the moments that take place through the keyhole of the door, where you're watching stuff happening in the hallway. It's so hilarious and terrifying at the same time, and I just had so much fun with this. I think it's one that you can rewatch and just have a blast with it. It's even better when you see it with a group of people, and I loved it, and I'm excited for the next installment. Coming in at number 4 was another surprise for me. That is When Evil Lurks. This is from director Damien Rugna, who is known for Terrified. This is a horror from Argentina that is centered on these two brothers who are living in this small rural town, and they discover a man dead, and it leads them to the home of this family where someone living there is rotted, which is basically a possessed person, and they take it into their own hands to get rid of this rotted person in order to get it out of their land so it doesn't destroy everything. But in doing so, they unleash the evil on the world, and everything from that point on just is pure chaos. And it is a non-stop thrill ride where these characters are trying to get their family to safety. They're trying to outrun the evil, but this evil is just unrelenting, and it is so disturbing. When the evil kicks off, I was shocked, and I was like, oh, okay, this is where we're gonna go. Because we see these two characters who basically, the evil gets in them and they kill each other, and it's just horrifying. The most horrifying violence I've ever seen. It is so shocking, so disturbing, and so quick, so fast paced that you don't even have time to process what's happening as you're seeing it before it's on to the next thing. And everything that's happening is all because of these two characters. They're stupid, and they just don't listen. They don't follow the rules, and they just keep making things worse for everybody. And it's just so, it's one of those movies where you're on the edge of your seat and you're like, oh my God, what else is gonna happen? It's just horrible, horrible stuff. And there's one scene in particular involving a dog that shocked me. One scene involving a person walking down the road eating another person that is absolutely shocking. There are so many disturbing scenes in this that I was blown away by the violence, by the special effects, the gore, and overall it was a really creative and unique possession story. It's not gonna be for everyone because it's disturbing, but I had a lot of fun with it. I don't know if I could rewatch it though because it was so intense, but it might get less intense upon rewatch. Coming in at number 3 is Horror in the High Desert 2, Minerva. So I liked Horror in the High Desert 1, but I didn't like it as much as Part 2. Part 2 I think is much better than the original one, and it improves on the original one. So this one is centered on two women who go missing in the desert and just how their stories are connected. And we get to see interviews with people who talk about the cases of these two women. We get to see footage from doorbell cams and home security as well as dash cams. So there's a lot of interesting elements of different media in this that bring the story together, which I thought was a great way to keep the story flowing and moving. And there's some really creepy moments in this that are just so subtle and so quiet that really, they made me scared. Like there was one moment where a person is sitting in a car and you see somebody behind them in the back windshield. It scared the shit out of me. Like I literally jumped and shouted a little bit because I was not expecting it, and our character has absolutely no idea. And that kind of stuff freaks me out when you're seeing stuff and the character is unaware. Whew, it was so scary, and I thought that the mystery was much more interesting than the first one, but I had a blast with it. I really liked it. It's low budget, and I thought that they did a great job with this. I'm excited for part 3. Coming in at number 2 is Cobweb. This was another surprise. So this is basically a dark fairy tale. It's centered on this little boy who is hearing things knocking on his wall at night, and when he tells his parents about it, they brush him off and tell him it's just his imagination gone wild. But he thinks that something deeper is going on and his parents aren't involved. And so he starts to investigate, and it gets insane. First of all, this is set on Halloween, and the imagery is just magnificent. It is the perfect Halloween movie where you get those Halloween vibes. This family has a pumpkin patch. There's pumpkins everywhere. It's just so beautiful, and it's dark, it's dreary, it feels like fall. And this little boy is so likable, he's so sweet, and you just want him to be okay. And the two lead actors that play his parents, Lizzie Kaplan and that guy from The Boys, are fantastic because you can't really tell if they're good, if they're bad. They're both charming and sweet at times, but then they can change in an instant and become really, it's just devilish and unnerving, and you're like, you don't know who to trust, and it's so creepy, and you're put into the shoes of this little boy, and it's a child's nightmare. And I felt like it was very much like on the same vibe as Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark meets Goosebumps, but it's just for an older generation. It just felt so oddly cozy to me, but also batshit insane, especially towards the end when blood is flying everywhere, this little boy is trying to survive, and the story just gets insane, and I loved it. It felt like a Barbarian, it felt like Barbarian meets Malignant towards the end with just how crazy and absurd it gets, and I loved it. I thought it was so bold and creative and fun, and I want more people to watch it and give it a chance because it's amazing. And coming in at number 1 is Talk to Me. So this movie is about a group of teenagers who are playing with this embalmed hand at parties that allows them to become possessed by a spirit, but in doing so it gives them kind of a high, and the kids become addicted to it. One kid in particular who has just lost her mother, she's getting a real high off of it, and on one case she actually speaks to her mother, and it becomes a horrific situation, and it's a story about grief and loss, about fitting in, drug use, and it's just filled with some really dark and disturbing imagery. There's some really violent moments in this that shocked me, and there's also some humor sprinkled throughout. It was just one of those movies where I felt uncomfortable throughout the whole thing because I didn't know where the story was going, and I was just scared. And some of the imagery just took my breath away. Like, there's a quick moment that you get of what I assume to be hell that really just is burned into my brain, and it just made me so scared. And there's just this little sweet boy named Riley in it who goes through a lot of stuff, and it's really hard to watch. And the lead actress is so good. You feel every emotion she's feeling, and it's just one of those mind fuck movies where you're like, you don't know what's happening, if it's real or not, or if it's just in her head. I also love how they took a possession story and kind of switched it up and used this embalmed hand, which was so unique. You don't learn that much about it, but it was just a creative way to bring that into the story. And overall, I thought it was fresh. I thought it was unique. I thought that the story was interesting and emotional, and I loved the ending. I thought it had a perfect ending. It's one of those gut punch endings, and I just really enjoyed it. So there you have it. Those are my favorite movies of 2023. Let me know what movies are on your list this year, how your list stacks up to mine, if there are any movies that I didn't mention that you think should be included in the best of the year list. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you're having a happy new year, and there's plenty of horror on the horizon. I'm excited for 2024 and all the upcoming horror movies we're gonna get. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.